Welcome again in the lecture series of microbiology series, History of Microbiology. Today we are going to discuss about the historical aspects of microbiology, their discoveries, their and all. So microbiology is the study of living organisms of microscopic size. The term microbiology was given by French chemist Louis Pasteur. Microbiology is said to have its roots in the great expansion and development of the biological sciences that took place after 1850. The term microbe was first used by Sedillot. Microorganisms were first living things to appear on Earth, and the study of fossil remains indicate that microbial infections and epidemic diseases existed thousands of years ago. Varo and Columella. In the 1st century BC, postulated that diseases were caused by invisible beings that was like Animalia minuta inhaled or ingested. Fracastorius of Verona proposed a contagium vivum as a possible cause of infectious disease and warned Plenciz suggests that each disease was caused by a separate agent. Roger Bacon in the 13th century postulated that disease is produced by invisible living creatures. This suggestion was made again in 1546 by a physician Girolamo Fracastorius of North Italy. He wrote a treatise De Contagione in which he said disease was caused by minute seed or germ and spread from person to person. His work represents a great landmark in the doctrine of infectious disease. In 1665, Robert Hooke, an English scientist, used a simple lens that magnified objects approximately 30 times. He examined thin slices of cork, the bark of oak tree, and he referred to as cells. Later, the Hooke work was followed by Matthias Schleiden and Theodor Schwann, that is also known as Schleiden and Schwann theory of cell, who examined a variety of organisms and later became foundation of cell theory. The discovery of microbiology as a discipline could be traced along the following historical eras. This period concerns with the discovery of microbial world that has been dominated by Anton von Leeuwenhoek. Anton von Leeuwenhoek of Delft, Holland, Netherlands was the first person to observe and accurately describe microorganisms, that is, bacteria and protozoa, and he said on that time as a animalcules, which means little animals, in 1676. Actually, he was a Dutch linen merchant, but spent much of his spare time constructing simple microscopes composed of double convex lenses held between two silver plates. He constructed over 250 small powerful microscopes that could magnify around 50 to 300 times. Leeuwenhoek was the first person to produce precise and correct descriptions of bacteria and protozoa using microscope he made himself. Because of this extraordinary contribution to microbiology, he is considered the father of bacteriology and protozoology. He wrote over 200 letters, which was transmitted a series of letters from 1674 to 1723 to the Royal Society in London during a 50 years of period. He wrote 4 volumes of Arcana Natura Opit Beneficio Acquisite 11 and Mirovopiona Detita. Although there were a number of significant developments in microbiology during Anton von Leeuwenhoek's time, people were interested to correlate disease with microbes. The main aspects were to solve the controversy over spontaneous generation, which includes experimentations mainly of Francisco Redi, John Needham, Lazarus Plangeni, and Nicholas Appert, etc. Nicholas Part is the scientist who has given the appertization process. John Needham, he has done milestone work in nematology. And to know the disease transmission, which mainly includes the work of Ignaz Semmelweis and John Snow. Francisco Redi, the ancient belief in a spontaneous generation, was first of all challenged by Redi, an Italian physician, who carried out a series of experiments on decaying meat and its ability to produce maggots and spontaneously. Maggot is the young one form of fly. Reddy was the first who put the theory of a spontaneous generation to test by conducting a simple experiment in which he placed meat in three jars. One jar was covered with fine gauze, second was covered with paper, and third was left uncovered. Flies entered the jar that was open to air, that is left uncovered, and landed on meat where they laid their eggs that later developed into maggots. The other two pieces of meat did not produce maggots spontaneously. However, flies were attracted to the gauze covered jars and laid their eggs on the gauze, and maggots subsequently developed without access to the meat, indicating that maggots were the offspring of the flies and did not arise from some vital source in the meat as previously believed. John Needham, he was probably the greatest supporter of the theory of spontaneous generation. He proposed that tiny organisms, the animalcules, arose spontaneously on his mutton gravy. He covered the flasks with cork as done by Reddy and even heated some flasks. Still the microbes appeared on mutton broth. Lazarus Plangini, he was an Italian naturalist who attempted to refute Needham's experiment. He boiled beef broth for longer period, removed the air from the flask, and then sealed the container. Following incubation, no growth was observed by him in this flask. He showed that the heated nutrients could still grow animalcules when exposed to the air by simply making a small crack in the neck. Thus, Spallanzani disproved the doctrine of spontaneous generation. Nicolas Appert followed the idea of Spallanzani's work. He was a French winemaker who showed that soups and liquids can be preserved by heating them extensively in thick champagne bottles. Ignaz Semmelweis and John Snow were the two persons who showed a growing awareness of the mode of disease transmission. Two German scholars, Schultz and Theodor Schwann, viewed that air was the source of microbes and sought to prove this by passing air through hot glass tube or strong chemicals into boiled infusions in flasks. The infusion in both the cases remained free from these microbes. George Schroeder and Theodor von Dust were the first to introduce the idea of using cotton plugs for plugging microbial culture tubes. Darwin, that is also known as the father of evolution, in his book Origin of the Species, shows that the human body could be conceived as a creature susceptible to the laws of nature. He was he was of the opinion that disease may be biological phenomenon rather than any magic. Science is all about magic. If you know, it's a science. If you don't know, that's magic. That's all today in this lecture. Next, we're going to discuss about the eras and their all things. Thank you very much.